Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from today. Welcome to Social Suite's ESG webinar series. My name is Eleanor Bailey Carter, Social Suite's Senior Content Strategist. Thank you for joining our webinar today on how to transform your corporate purpose. While a few more people are joining us, it would be great to know where everyone is calling in from today. Let us know your location in the chat on the right-hand side of the screen. It would also be great to hear where you are on your ESG journey. Perhaps you're still unsure on how to get started with ESG, or maybe you've even published your first ESG report. Let us know in the chat. I will be monitoring this chat throughout the webinar, so make sure to post any questions you have, any comments, anything you'd like to bring up as we go along the way, and we'll get back to them along near to the end of this 30-minute webinar. So before I introduce this morning's speakers, I'll share a very quick introduction into Social Suite. Social Suite is a US and Australian software company and a global leader in impact technology. We help organizations to measure and report the impact they have on the world. True experts in our field, we've been helping organizations to disclose impact and create value since 2014. With our ESG software platform and coaching solution, we help companies to get started quickly and easily with their ESG journey. We focus on helping small and medium-sized companies with ESG reporting, but this work is with companies across all industries and various exchanges around the world. I'd now like to welcome today's speakers. It is with great pleasure that I introduce our very special guest today, Phil Preston. Phil helps individuals, teams, and organizations navigate trend to purpose in business. He's the author of Connecting Profit with Purpose and the founder of the Business Purpose Project, including video, podcasts, corporate conversations on purpose, and talking purpose in business and life. I think it's safe to say that Phil is a true expert in purpose, and we're looking forward to hearing from him today. Joining Phil is our Chief Impact Officer, Dr. Tim Siegenbeek van Heukelom. He is an expert ESG specialist with broad knowledge of ESG landscape and reporting requirements. Tim is passionate about aligning organizations' overall purpose with delivering day-to-day social good while on the path to profit. He has global experience working with small to large cap companies to help them close the gap between corporate prosperity and sustainable development outcomes by identifying shared value opportunities. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Tim and Phil as they walk you through how to transform your corporate purpose.
Excellent. Thanks, Eleanor, for that introduction. And Phil, welcome. Good to have you again. We did a webinar about a year ago, and we're back for more.
Yep.
What we'd like to do, is dig in a bit more into purpose. That's why we're here today, of course, but really trying to understand some of the I guess more the tangibles around purpose. So we'll talk a little bit at the start about what is purpose. We'll try to untangle that together, vision, mission, purpose, like what that is. But really what we want to drive today is look more at why does purpose matter? What is the competitive advantage around purpose if you do that well? And then how do you make it real? And I think that's a key thing here, where a lot of people, when they think around purpose or vision or mission or values for an organization, it's a great exercise to which your team write it up, but then you need to make sure it doesn't just sit on the shelf for 11 months. You quickly review it and that's it, but making that real. So I think most people here would be really interested to hear near the end as well, like what are some of those tips we have to transform how we think and how we work with purpose, and what are some of the things that you do in your work and how we can help some of our people attending our webinar today. So there's a little bit of the agenda there. What I wanted to do first is, you're the founder of the Business Purpose Project, and this really great quote that you've got here is you talk a little bit about that shift to the purpose economy. And can you tell us a little bit more maybe about what is that, the purpose economy, and what put you on that pathway towards creating the Business Purpose Project, and what do you do in that space?
Yeah, I'll give you the brief story, and it's great to see we've got a few people from the US online because there is a US component to this. And essentially, I worked in the investment industry before I started doing the work I do now and setting up my own business, which I've been doing for more than a decade. But when I was in the investment industry, the focus was on CSR, or corporate social responsibility. And there seemed to be this overwhelming idea that CSR would change things and save the world. And that didn't really sit true with me, because it was often a cost center sitting, somewhere in an organization, and a function that didn't have a lot of power. It wasn't really connected into strategy. So that was a source of frustration. And when I set out and set up my own business, and I'd been consulting for a couple of years, I got engaged with some of the work of Michael Porter from Harvard Business School and Mark Kramer, also from Harvard Business School and FSG, where they were really bringing out a lot of case studies about how understanding where companies address societal challenges, such as social and environmental challenges, in a profitable way. So there's an underlying profit driver there. And while some people reacted to that and said, oh, we shouldn't be profiting from doing good in the world, the reality is that if you are doing something that is good and it's part of your core business, you're actually bringing more resources to that challenge. So when we think about all the challenges in the world today, we need the resources of business, of the core business, to be coming to the fore, rather than just their CSR budget, which sits a little on the side. So I guess that whole conversation, Tim, evolved into a business purpose one. So instead of this just being specific products or practices or strategies, the idea is that the whole of your business needs to align to things that society needs, and we'll come to that again in a moment. But maybe just a final point here is that I find that companies, when they're thinking about purpose and purpose transformation, sometimes they're scared because they think, well, do I need 20 consultants to help me do this? Well, I don't think you do. Quite often it's just having that nudge of, say, a briefing or a presentation or maybe some advisory along the way. But I think most companies can really grab this and run with it themselves with fairly minimal supervision or advice. So, and I guess just finally on the Business Purpose Project on the website, we have a series called Corporate Conversations on Purpose. And Brad Gurry, the CEO of Social Suite, appears on one of those episodes. So that's a good reference as well. I don't know if we've got the website on there, Tim. It's businesspurposeproject.com if you want to check that out.
Great. Yeah, no, I definitely recommend everyone to have a listen to that. In terms of that, like what you're saying, I think is a really key thing, that people are a bit overwhelmed when they think about purpose. There might be a little question around what does it fully mean and how do I get a grip on it? But then there is the question around, do I need to get a whole team, 20 consultants, etc., in to actually help me work through this piece? But I think the key thing here is in that shift to that purpose economy, where people are starting to see the benefits of doing good while on the path to profit. It's all about finding a bit of guidance to actually build that capacity internally. So I think that's like one of the things I love about the Business Purpose Project is just giving just enough support, but not just taking everything and going away and coming back and saying, here's your purpose statement. It's taking people on a journey with you. So I think that I'd highly recommend everyone to look a bit further into the Business Purpose Project and what that means to get that guidance around starting the journey, or at least understanding where you are on that purpose journey. So next topic then is you don't want to go a little bit into the what is purpose there before we jump into making it more real in terms of how do you apply it, how do you work with it. Can you tell us a little bit around when we talk about purpose? Like some people know their personal individual purpose and they're trying to figure that out, but then on a more corporate level there, how what is business purpose and what is corporate purpose, and can you give us a bit of an introduction on that?
Yeah, well, the slide sums up the key points, but you're right, it's a very generic term and it does get thrown around in many, well, it's unclear often what the contexts are. So you're right, some people talk about personal purpose, but that's different from an organizational or a company purpose. But it really is the business why. So it's why you exist. In other words, what's the benefit to society you're trying to deliver in a profitable way? And I almost should be underlining the word profitable way, because one thing that goes wrong in business purpose statements when people craft them is that they do think about, oh, what would our employees like, or what would customers like, but they don't necessarily create that link to the commercial aims of the business. And you've got to have both those things aligning. Otherwise, people, if it doesn't align to the core business, then people will just ignore it, Tim, for another year until they go on their next strategy offsite and they sort of review it again. But as we said earlier, this is really about making it real. So a lot of the tips we'll be giving today are around how do you actually go from creating a purpose statement to implementing, and what are some of the key steps there. So the reality is it has to be core to everything you do, which is quite a frightening idea, I think, because 5 years ago, purpose statements weren't really talked about that much in a serious way. Now it is critical to business, and we're going to go through in a couple of slides to talk about why it's critical. But if it's core to everything you do, then it has to affect every part of your business. That is a bit confronting. However, it's hard work, but it really pays off. And I think that the firms that are going to survive and prosper will be the ones who get this right.
So if you think about, generically an organization, who holds the keys to purpose? So if we think about that why, like you see more and more organizations hiring chief purpose officers. And are they then tasked with figuring out purpose and delivering and implementing it? Or do we need to more look at, like, where did this company come from? Who's the founder? Why did they start this in the first place? Or anywhere in between? Who in an organization, is there anyone who generally holds the keys on this?
It's interesting. It can start in a couple of different places, but it will typically be more often than not the CEO role. However, it could also come from the directors and the board, or an interplay of the two. I would say that funnily enough, Tim, when I set out building my business, I thought my customers would be CEOs who were thinking, I don't know anything about purpose. I don't really see the need for it, but I might need some help. But in fact, that's not the case. So I found my customers are CEOs who intuitively get that purpose is a positive thing that they need in order to be profitable in years ahead. So it's either giving them a bit of confidence that they're not alone, but also to help them bring their people along. And by bringing their people along, that means the board, it means other executives, it means the leadership group, and then ultimately employees. Now, I don't necessarily have to be involved in that, the employee in the frontline piece, but they need the leadership tools to really go on that journey. Yeah. Was there another part to your question, Tim, or did I cover it?
I think that covers it quite well. Cool. Before we start to untangle it a bit more, it's always good to just dig into some examples here. And you got a great one here. Why is this such a good purpose statement?
Yeah, well, it's well known to Australian people. It's quite a big global company as well. But if you don't know Cochlear, they make bionic ear devices, and they're quite a leader in this space. They have competitors. And what I love about this company is it's just a great example of a really good purpose statement. So notice that they don't say our purpose is to make bionic ear devices. That is actually the activity they're performing, but the outcome or the social benefit or societal benefit they're creating is to help people hear and be heard. So it's a really nice contrast of, it's not the activity, but this is what we're trying to deliver in a profitable way to society. Also, two other key mistakes companies make, and there's many more than two, but two key ones are sometimes you'll still see a lot of companies talking about profit goals. So they often will say, we want to be the most profitable doer of something. And you see, for example, in mining companies in that realm, you still see purpose statements expressed that way. And it shouldn't be an indicator of what you want your market position to be either. You don't say you want to be the largest provider of insurance services or the largest provider of something else, because that's really speaking to that profit goal as well. You're just saying we want to have a big market position so we make lots of money. Societies, it's a little bit more complex today, and you've got to be speaking to that benefit that you're creating. So
effectively steer away from activity focused or profit goals, and really, again, go back to that. Why are you doing this in the first place? How are you helping the world? Yeah. I put one in here of one of our social suite customers that's been doing ESG reporting with us for a long time, OneView Healthcare. I quite like their purpose statement as well, unifying the care experience. Short, to the point. Any feedback on that?
Yeah, so I jumped on and had a look at this, and what I like about them is actually the origin story, which I'll mention in a moment. Maybe you can add something to it, Tim. So they're basically a B2B service provider and helping to unify the patient care experience in hospital and medical situations. And what they're doing is really bringing a range of systems and content and services together for that patient journey. So yeah, it is indicating that benefit they're trying to create. And Tim, from what I could tell on their website, the founder, Mark McCloskey, found himself in hospital, and just while he said the team around him were wonderful, he just couldn't believe how sort of fragmented all the services and all the information that had to come in and how that was shared. He said it looked very manual, very unwieldy. So that really spurred him to try and create that solution. And if you want to add anything to that, that's all I know.
That's spot on, and I think that's such a interesting why story as well, like the why he did that from a founder, from a company. But also then I think one of the key drivers that they have is in doing this, like they are a health technology platform in the end, but they're really trying to, not lose sight of the humanity around care and really making sure that it's not just a technology solution and that's the end of it. So I think like whether that's like clear in here, but I think that word experience really draws that out as well there, that it's trying to bring a lot of things together with a very strong why from the founder there. It's short, it's to the point. So yeah, I think another interesting example of how purpose statements can be really short, but there's a lot of thought probably that's gone into this.
Yeah, and Tim, coming back to your point a minute ago, I think you said, how do you derive purpose statements? Well, the origin story is one. And so a lot of companies that are much older companies are going back to that origin story. Newer ones typically are very focused on, I guess, net positive outcomes in society. Two other methods would be looking at sustainable development goals, for example, and saying, well, which ones are we aligning with, or which ones do we want to align with? And sorry, I've written some notes here and I can't read my handwriting. Another approach to take is to say, look, how do we genuinely and positively impact our customers' lives, and maybe reframing and refocusing around that customer experience more so than what you want to do in your activity.
Yeah. So when we think about it, I think it's like we've got a good shape now around what purpose is, where it comes from, who now holds the key on it or works on that. Just briefly here, untangling the jargon. There's a lot out there, and mostly our customers that we work with, they say, "Oh, we have a vision statement, or we know our mission," and then we, from an ESG point of view, say, "Well, we want you to go a step further and think about that purpose." And then we get that, well, we already have it. We'll just cross out the word mission and we say purpose statement, and there we are. So can you just take us through this briefly and really help us untangle that a bit more, and why it's so important that once you might have already a vision and a mission clear, you still want to take that step to frame that into a purpose?
Yeah, it's fair to say, and by the way, if anyone has any questions on this, please put them in the chat. It's fair to say there's no global standard around this. However, I think the way the investor market is moving, and again, we're going to come to that very shortly, it's really starting to define what vision, purpose, and mission are, and what's important. So yes, vision is that world you aspire to create, and it's probably not something you're going to see in the next year or so, but it's the real aspiration. And I'll give you an example in a minute of what that looks like for a company. Purpose, we've already covered, why your company exists. Mission is generally around the change you're trying to mobilize in pursuit of your purpose. And if you can think of even Steve Jobs talked about, we want to make a dent in the universe, or something like that. That was very much around a mission. And it was just trying to, I guess, align employees and let customers know what the change is trying to push through, but it wasn't really talking about its purpose. So making a dent in the universe doesn't easily translate into a societal benefit. Pillars are quite important. A lot of companies then chunk their purpose down often into 3 pillars just to make it a little bit more digestible. And I'll give an example in a sec, as I said. Values and behaviors are, the principles. Values are typically the things you cherish and what you see as being real drivers of your success over time and in the future. And I'd say behaviors are often sort of things that are non-negotiable in the way that you go about your business. Now, quite often they're lumped in together. So yeah, you could have both, but you generally just see values referred to. So an interesting example here is a company called Sims Limited, which is a metal and electronics recycler and is now emerging into the renewable energy space. So their vision is, if you go onto their website and look at their materials, their vision is a world where everyone acts as a steward of the natural world. And that's not just people, they mean organizations and governments as well. So that's their big aspiration. Their purpose is creating a world without waste to preserve the planet. So that's really nicely stated. Their mission is to constantly innovate and offer new solutions in the circular economy. So that's the change they're mobilizing. And then if you break that down into pillars, they talk about operate responsibly, close the loop, and partner for change. And when you actually go into some of the details of what they're doing, they put measurements around those things. So at each of those 3 pillars, they're putting in place measurement systems, and also at the higher purpose level, they're putting in measurements around that as well. So that's quite an advanced approach.
But still, that's a really good example to make this real. So I think thanks for sharing that. That helps a lot, at least for me, to just take that the jargon there and just say, like, look at this example here. Now, if you think about we spoke about the what, the why, but why does it matter then? So if we switch gears a little bit there, why is it so important as a company? You spoke a little bit about that shift to the purpose economy, etc. This looks quite interesting.
But before I just talk through the slide, I've got a quiz question for you, Tim, or for anyone watching. It's a multiple choice quiz question for you. How many people do you think were on this planet 100 years ago, Tim? Was it 1 billion, 2 billion, or 3 billion?
1 billion.
1? Incorrect. Try again.
Less than that.
So 2 billion. Did you said 1 billion? The answer is 2 billion. And you know roughly how many people there are today?
What are we closing? 7, 8?
Yeah, we're getting up to 8, 7.97 billion. Yeah. So we've gone from 2 billion to 8 billion people in the space of 100 years, which in a geological timeline is just a speck of sand. And therefore, the way we did business 100 years ago, arguably 50 years ago, even 20 years ago, is not the way we will be doing business in the future, because we've gone from, I guess, industrial production and making things. We had infinite resources out there, but today we live on a very crowded and connected planet, as we all know. Those issues are in our face. So what this means is global investors like the BlackRocks of the world, and they've got $10 trillion of assets under their stewardship, they're saying we can only back the companies that are making a net positive impact in the world, because they're the only ones that are going to be profitable in the future. And so that's where their focus lies. And it's not, so I think if we go back 10 years ago in the investor market, it was very much, this conversation was very much focused around socially responsible investing and funds that were sort of very niche funds that either did or didn't invest in certain companies. This is now mainstream. So it's in the main street. So that profile there, if we look at, you want high profitability and you want companies aligned with societal needs. So outside of that, it's not going to be, investors won't be that interested. You've got to be in the top right. A very quick illustration of that is a company like Unilever has certainly been, from 2010 onwards, they went into a purpose transformation process, and it took them a decade to do it, the majority of it. They would be in that high sort of competitive advantage box there, high profitability aligned with society. A company, a competitor like Danone, the French dairy giant, they did some great stuff in the sustainability space, but they struggled to deliver on the profitability piece. So I think the chairman exited last year. He was an executive chairman. So yeah, you can't get by without the low profitability tag. You've got to be in that high profitability space. And just a third one to mention, Kraft Heinz, which had a tilt at taking over Unilever a couple of years ago. They failed in that bid, and they subsequently blew up because their traditional business model was acquiring new brands, rolling them up, stripping out costs. They weren't investing in R&D significantly, and they completely missed the trend to healthy eating and a whole lot of other social trends that were going on. And subsequently, they blew up. So they were in that high profitability space, but weren't really aligning with what society needed. So they became socially unsustainable. And then, you might gravitate into that pending doom box. You don't end up in pending doom.
Yeah, no, that's the last we want. Yeah. So I like that, the way you frame that. Like, it is a bit of a new recipe for success there. Tell us a bit more about, around the focus on core business. I think you had some good examples there.
Yeah. So in simple terms, it's we've gravitated from a world where we thought about, we make some money as a business, and if we've done okay, we give a little bit back to charities, communities, and so on. Or we're spending a bit of money on maintaining brand and reputation. That's the old world, and I'd say the majority of companies are still operating under that model. The new world is, you've got to understand what your core business is about and how it creates, hopefully, net positive impacts in society. So that's a much bigger deal. And if you can do that well, what we're saying is, if you can deliver those benefits well, then, and you can do it efficiently and effectively, then you'll be profitable, and then you can keep reinvesting in delivering that benefit, and so on. It becomes a reinforcing relationship, and not just a one-way, we'll give a little bit back after we've made money, because what you do in making that money could be devastating for people on the planet. So it's not, it's not adequate just to give a little bit back in that circumstance. Society, investors, employees, customers aren't tolerating that anymore.
And I think on that one, the way we manage people, planets, the way we think about prosperity there, what we see is one of the key things when we work with our customers on environmental social governance is that purpose is a really strong starting point. And we see in the World Economic Forum stakeholder capitalism metrics, the framework that we get our customers to start that ESG journey on. On the left there, we have that setting purpose as the very first metric to start thinking about in a journey. And then there is also more of an expanded metric around, what are you doing about it? So how are you implementing that? So can you tell us a bit more about how you see that link between purpose and environmental social governance? And maybe then after that as well, like, what do we need to do to go from just setting purpose to actually making sure across the business we are managing it, implementing it?
Yeah, I think these two boxes here highlight the transition we're in. So as of today, I would argue that when investors look at companies, they're typically satisfied if the company has a good purpose statement. But in the future, you have to prove you're delivering on that statement. So that's what's coming, arguably in the next 1, 2, 3 years. Companies will be challenged. Now, if you're a smaller company, probably not such a big deal today, but if you're growing, then it's going to be a big deal for you in the future if you're looking for a bigger institutional investor base. So as you can see there, setting purpose is the hurdle rate today, but then embedding it in your business is the expanded metric. But I would argue that will become probably a standard metric in years to come. I don't know if or how the WEF will adjust their, their factors, but I think if you want to be competitive, you'll have to be there. And Tim, I think the next slide has a diagram which sort of outlines the interaction here. So, this is my view of where ESG sits relative to purpose. So purpose is your aim, your intent. In the middle, it's impacted by strategy, operations, and people. So just to put a bit of flesh around that, strategy is doing the right things. And if you do the right things, you're going to survive and prosper. Operations is about doing things right, which is all about, alignment within the firm and efficiency. And then you need your people to be energized, inspired, creative, innovative, and so on to deliver, those efficiency and effectiveness pieces. And if you think about it, they're really all bounded up by the ESG framework. And Tim, you probably want to make some comments here, but my final point is that materiality, understanding which ESG factors are more material to your business is certainly a key part of that strategy discussion.
And I think on that point, that what we see here is really useful to understand that environmental social governance metrics enable you to actually have standardized and comparable data and information to report on how you're delivering your purpose. So you've set your purpose, you're implementing that, but how do your stakeholders, investors actually know if you're on track or not? They need something. And back in the day, it was like CSR programs, you're doing something or you're doing some ad hoc work. But now by having more comparable ways of reporting that are standardized, that are periodic, you actually can follow a company through an ESG journey and see in doing that, how that purpose journey is unfolding as well. Like, are they actually, when they say this is our purpose, are they actually delivering on that? So I think that's one of the key things that we see. By really being clear about your purpose, it helps you also to really understand and embed that ESG data into a narrative and into a journey over time.
Tim, just a quick example there. A private company that I know locally, it's many hundreds of billions of dollars revenue. Millions, did I say billions? Hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. It's basically a cleaning and facilities management company. Their journey is currently, they're a private company, so you could argue, why do they care about ESG? Well, they do care because their customers are large corporates, and those large corporates are saying, we need the data from you because we've got ESG reporting to do and stakeholders to satisfy. So this private company, to their credit, they're sort of doing a shadow, I guess, ESG type of process within their firm because they know they're going to need it.
And I think that's a key thing. What we see is that trickle-down effect now, that listed companies, they feel the bit more pressure from investors, but unlisted private companies, they feel equal pressure now because everyone is starting to look at what are your ESG reports and metrics? Do you know your carbon footprint? So they will get asked by their suppliers or by stakeholders at large around, can you show this data? We want to make sure that you are operating in a long-term sustainable way, and we need a level of transparency, above and beyond the financial disclosures you've been delivering for years, for decades. So we really see that happening, and we see in our customer base as well exactly a reflection of that. More and more unlisted private companies say it's the right thing to do, for one, but also we feel that urgency, we feel the pressure around us that we need to start that journey there. So we've got a few minutes left there. Quickly, how can we make this real then? What can we do to ensure that that purpose doesn't end up being a word once in a board meeting?
Yeah, I'll just give a couple of tips from this slide because I know we're time challenged here. So it does require, oh, sorry, Tim, just want to jump back quickly to the diagram very quickly. A lot of organizations try purpose transformation and 70% fail, according to McKinsey. So you've really got to tap into what's your commercial driver for this. And then this diagram you can look at a little bit later as well. But it just says you've got to go through a process here of mobilizing change within your senior management, but then engaging a wider range of stakeholders, and then it flows from there. So yeah, you want to move on to the next one, Tim?
Yep.
Just a couple of reasons why it's worth reviewing. One, checking in that you are well aligned with what society needs. Sometimes your existing purpose statement, your why, is not well framed, so you might want to review that. Investor needs is a big one, as we've discussed. Getting access to resources such as capital and finance. Increasingly banks, for example, are looking at ESG and they're being asked about ESG by their investors. Workforce talent, this is a huge one. Actually getting the best talent and keeping them. Going into new markets, new products or markets. M&A profiles can change your company profile, so therefore it might be time for a rethink. And another example is a crisis, might require a fundamental rethink of your business model. So there's some of the reasons I see. A couple of tips is that you really do need to make a genuine commitment, and because it's the DNA of your business, it needs to filtrate through everything you do. So getting buy-in with your leadership team is useful. Don't settle for a purpose statement that's just nice that people like, and I mentioned that earlier on. You've really got to go through that process of embedding it within within everything you do, your policies, procedures, your operations, down to people's KPIs. And overall, do it with humility, tell the right stories internally. And no one expects you to get this right first time, but if you can genuinely show you're taking the journey, then stakeholders, internal ones, your people, and external ones are going to reward you for that. So a lot of people on our corporate conversations on purpose series just talk about, don't expect perfection, just get started.
And I think that's a great message to leave off with. That's what we tell our customers as well with the ESG journey. Don't overthink it. Don't over-engineer it. Just get started today. It's one step at a time. You're not going to be perfect overnight, but you'd rather start now and demonstrate what you're doing. Be transparent. Aim for sustainability in the long term, because that's what people are looking for. And we got great people like you to help on that journey there around purpose. So thanks for sharing a lot of the background on purpose today, Phil. And and also giving us some tips there, like what we can be doing. Now, I'll just hand back to Eleanor to wrap up for today. The main thing would be, I think, that Elle, if you can tell us a little bit about our social suite platform, our offer today, but also I think I just want to flag here that if you want to talk to Phil, reach out to him by email, scan the QR code there. He's really good starting point to just have that like an introductory chat about, where are you on purpose? So highly recommend just to reach out and have a chat.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Tim. So Social Suite's ESG platform is ideal for companies who are just starting their ESG journey and looking to report against the globally recognized World Economic Forum Stakeholder Capitalism Metrics ESG framework. With this fit-for-purpose approach, smaller listed or private companies no longer need large ESG teams to provide robust and transparent ESG reporting. They can share ongoing progress through quarterly updates, publish investor relations reports, access comprehensive ESG resources, and make incremental progress with the support of a dedicated ESG coach. For everyone registered for today's webinar, we are halving our $10,000 onboarding fee, which is made up of our one-time implementation fee and support in creating your crucial first baseline report. If you're interested in accessing this offer or would like to receive a full product demonstration, please drop us an email or book a calendar in our President of ESG's calendar today. I will be dropping our full contact details in the chat box in 1 second. I would like to open the platform for any questions that you wanted to ask us, or is there anything that Phil and Tim said along the way that you would like expanding upon at all?
I'm sure that we'll have questions that we can get back to as well. So if there's anything on your mind later on, make sure to reach out to us or to Phil directly even. Like we really want to help everyone get started on that purpose journey, or start looking at how you can transform that journey and really make a difference there. So we look forward to see everyone on the ESG and purpose journey.
Thanks so much, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.